Welcome to AppShed IoT. This channel is dedicated to showcasing projects and lessons using the AppShed IoT platform from our teams and members from our community. In this video, we're going to take a look on how to get started with the analog pin and the sensors on the AppShed IoT. Let's jump right in. For this project, we need the following: a Node MCU running the AppShed IoT firmware. Of course, you can buy a pre-flash node or you can flash a node yourself with the AppShed firmware. If you're unsure of how to do this, you can check out our other video, which can be found in the video description. We will also need a breadboard, some jumpers, and an analog sensor of your choice. We recommend a light sensor, also known as a photocell, as that's what we're going to be using in the video. The first thing we need to do is get the sensor plugged in. We use the breadboard here again, as it makes plugging in these sensors and jumpers so much easier. We start by sliding the sensor into the breadboard in this configuration, taking note of the markings on the sensor. Normally, VCC means power in, G or GND means ground, and S or A0 means source. We start by connecting VCC on your sensor to 3V3 on your AppShed IoT board. Then G gets connected to ground, and finally S gets connected to A0. Now A0 on our board is really important as it's an analog pin. The rest of these are all digital pins. This means they can only read in digital, which is only on or off as we saw with our buttons in the last video. The analog pin is able to read analog values which range from 0 to 124, giving us a much bigger spectrum to see the variation in data. Now you do get a digital sensor, however we'll talk about that in a future video. With our board wired up, let's move on to building our sensor app. Head over to appshed.com and log in if you already have an account, or create a new free trial. Again, these trials are infinite, so if you want a pro account, you can just ask one of our mods on Discord. They'll be more than willing to upgrade you for free. Once logged in, head over to the app builder and then click on the IoT builder at the top of the menu. We then click create new project and give it a name and description like sensor project. Now we'll need to attach our sensor to pin A0 in the IoT builder the same way we did in real life. So click on custom underneath analog inputs and then click on pin A0. We will then need to give it a title and a variable name to this pin. The variable name is really important as we'll use it later in the app, so make sure you take note of what you name it. I'm going to name mine light. We then add the range that this will measure. Since it's analog, we can put 0 to 1024, set the unit as analog and click save. Now we can move on to our app, so go ahead and click app builder in the top of the menu, and then click the red plus button to create a new app. The first thing we're going to do is pair our app with the IoT board. So go ahead and click on boards and then click on the board that we've just created. Now we can add something called an input box to our app. This is something that we can do to show that the data is coming from our A0 pin. So click on input box under forms. We then give it a title like sensor values. Now in the name box we can put our variable that we want to be displayed. So type light the same way we did in our IoT builder and then go ahead and click save. Now when we publish this app, it will show the current A0 value in the box, but that's pretty boring, so let's add a few features quickly before we publish it. Let's add a feature that tells us which level of light the sensor is picking up by either saying very bright, medium, or dark. To do this, we need to program with some Blockly. First things first, let's add our button that checks this. Click on button under forms and give it a title like check light values. Now as usual, we need to change the action of the button. So click action and then change action. Now scroll down on this list until you see Blockly and click on it. This is where you can write some custom code that will run whenever the button is clicked. The first thing we need to do is add an if statement to check what the current value is. Click on logic, then drag the if statement in. Then we'll need to go back to logic and get the equals block and drag it onto our if statement. Next we need to click on convert and drag the string to integer block into the left side of the equals block. This will convert our variable into a number. Now we can add our variable. Click app variables and you should see our light variable that we added to our input box. Click and drag the app variable light onto the string integer block. Now the last thing we need to do for this if statement is the threshold value. Click on math and drag the number block onto the other side of the equals block and change that number to something like 200. We now need to click on the equal sign and change it to equals to or smaller than, which looks like this. Now that we have our if condition set, we still need to give it something to do if the condition is met. So let's have a little pop-up in our app show up. Click on JavaScript, and then click and drag the alert box into the if block. The alert box is a pop-up, so we can put whatever text we want in it. What I've said here is, if my sense is smaller than 200, it will pop up with a message. Now 200 is quite a low value, which means it's quite bright out, so I'll set my message accordingly. I click on text, then drag the text block onto the alert box and type bright. Now we need to create another statement if our value is higher than 200. Luckily we can copy and paste. So right click on our if statement and click duplicate. We then can drag this copy onto the bottom of our first if statement. Now we need to change a few values. First of all, we need to change the equal or smaller than to equal or bigger than. And then we need to change the alert box to dim. And then we can hit save. Now we can publish the app and load it onto our phones for testing. As always, to do this, we click on publish, and then once you get the thumbs up, we can click on share and then click on the QR code. This code can be scanned with our phones to load up the app. Once the app is on your phone, you can go ahead and plug in your AppShed IoT board in and pair it with its Wi-Fi. As soon as this is done, your app should instantly start updating the light level input box with data from the light sensor. And if we click the button, we can see our little pop-up is telling us it's bright out.
Hey, it's Dante here. So I'm just jumping in quick to showcase a quick time lapse of the fancy version of the app that we did for this. So as you may have seen on our last project, we're always going to do a the basic, as easy as possible but functioning app, and then at the end we'll do a quick time lapse of the really nice looking app that you could build if you wanted to put some more time into it. Again, the functionality will be the exact same, it'll just show the data, and then when you click the button it'll say dim or bright, but it looks a lot nicer, and it kind of goes to show how if you want to put some time into designing the app and making it look really nice, you can, whether it's on Photoshop or Inkscape like I'm using, or even just Paint. I was experimenting with Paint the other day, and you can make a really nice looking app even on the most basic tool like Paint. So here I've pretty much just taken the images I made in Inkscape, uploaded them to AppShed, and given them an action. It's really cool that anything in AppShed can have an action. So we're used to putting an action on a button, but you can put an action on an image, you can put an action on a text item. Every single item in AppShed can have an action, which does whatever you want. In this case it's doing some Blockly, which is quite a cool feature because it really allows you to expand on the app. And here I am publishing it, and you can see there, again, the app has the exact same functionality, shows the data and tells you if it's dim or bright, but again, it just looks so much nicer, and it really makes the app a bit more validated, in my opinion, just to have a nice looking app as opposed to having the very boring button and the very boring input box.
As always, if you have any questions, feel free to join our Discord. We've got Q&A channels, show and tell channels, and even just general chats to share ideas with other makers and educators. The link is in the video description. Thanks for watching.